Okay, now we are back in the browser. And as you can see, we are in our bucket called resources. And let's take a look. We have this catalog menu item. Click catalog menu item. And as you can see, we have 32 objects, all the PDFs which we uploaded. And also you see that the titles of the objects are just their names of the PDF documents. So far so good. Now let's see what we can do with the catalog. For example, let's start with the simple object prefix filter. Let's find all the objects which have MinIO in the title. And as you can see, we use a typical regular expression syntax. We use stars on both sides of MinIO. And we click Apply All Filters. And we see that there are 15 objects in this bucket which have MinIO in the title. Let's add another constraint. For example, find all the objects which are greater than or equal 1 megabyte. And we put this one in the filter, apply all filters, and we see that we have just 5 objects which have MinIO in the title and also which are larger than 1 megabyte. The same way we can use the creation time, but in our case, as soon as we uploaded them just recently, maybe it's not very feasible. So this is our example of a simple use of catalog. And then you can play around changing the parameters and things like that. If you have objects with different creation times, then you can filter on that metadata. But in addition to that, we can use the advanced query menu item. And in the advanced query, we can use the query editor. In this case, it contains just an example, but we will paste our own query here. So let's copy it from our lab instructions and paste it here. In this case, we are searching for objects which have performance in the title. And then you see here we specify which fields we want to display. For each object, for each item, we want to display its key, which is its title, and its size. Let's run the query. And as you can see, we have several objects with performance in the title, and it displays its size. But also, in addition to that, we can add something more interesting. We can add user metadata to this output. For example, in this case, we add user metadata. And now we run this command again. And in the user metadata output, we see that all the metadata which we saw when we analyzed all these files in the terminal, we see that it's all passed in the bucket. We see PDF pages, we see author, we see creator, we see creation date, and so on and so forth. So this is good. And we can also use this user metadata to specify in the query. For example, let's replace this query with this new query. Take a look at this. We specify that we are searching for objects, and among those objects, we want to filter only the objects which have 3 pages in their PDF files. We specify the key and we specify the value equals 3, and then we want to display the title, the key, and the user metadata. Let's run this advanced query. And you see we have several objects, and each of them has 3 PDF pages. You can take a look at the output at the other user metadata fields and maybe specify some different criteria to filter your objects. And also remember that in our case, we just used the metadata which was included in the PDF. But in your case, maybe you can add your specific metadata when uploading images. You can add some labels and other interesting information, and then you can use it for filtering those objects. So this is pretty interesting, and you can run many different queries with this advanced query editor. But in addition to that, let's try to use command line, and let's try to automate these advanced queries. Again, we have to switch to the terminal session, and I will show you how to do it through the command line and Python scripts. We are back in our terminal session. And for this exercise, we will use the kubectl command, and we will have to figure out which service we want to use to access the catalog. Okay, let's do this. kubectl get catalog in the namespace first. You see we have this catalog -0, and we can also add show labels. And as you can see in the labels, it specifies which bucket this catalog is serving. And in our case, it's bucket resources, which means, yes, it's the catalog which we need. Now let's see what services are running in our cluster. And you see that we have catalog 0 cat and catalog 0 cat HL, which means headless. And we need this port 4000, and we want to run the port forward command to be able to use it. Let's run this port forward command. I will copy it. Okay, now we are forwarding this service through port 4000. And to use it, we switch to another tab in our terminal, and we will run this simple query using the curl command to access the catalog. In this query, we are asking which buckets is this catalog serving. And the response is, yes, the bucket is resources. Okay, so far so good. Now we want to run a more interesting, more complicated query, and it will show us something more. In this case, we are searching objects, and we are asking the catalog to show us the titles, the keys. You see, it showed us the list of objects and the title of each of them. We can add maybe the size, and we will see that it shows us the size. You can do the same thing with the curl command as we just did in the browser. You can specify the queries and you can make them more complex. But instead of that, we can use the Python API. We can run Python scripts and we can automate certain queries. First of all, again, let's activate our virtual environment and install this GraphQL Python library. Okay, and look here. So we have this GraphQL example. You can take a look at the script and see what's inside. It's pretty simple. So the query is specified the same way, items, and then show the key, the size, and the user metadata, and then just print them out. It's pretty simple. So let's run it. You see, for each object, this Python script shows us the title, the size, and the creation date. And of course, you can use the same query format which we used with the browser, and you can specify it in the Python script, which means you can automate all these requests, all these queries, and you can run them as often as possible. So this is the end of this lab, and I assume that you will learn more when looking at the Python scripts, at the source code, and experimenting with different queries and advanced queries for the catalog. Thanks for coming for this hands-on lab, and see you in the next courses.